Okay, so hi everybody, and thank you, Susie and Zorab, for inviting me here. Hopefully this is where the weekend starts rather than anything else for you, because I've got a bit of video to get you in the mood. And as we go through, there are a few little exercises, nothing too strenuous, okay, nothing dangerous, but that you can join in with, because this is a bit of an exploration for me and hopefully for yourselves of the ideas around accountability and responsibility, which have scared me to death for most of my professional life. Just a few words about me, just to prove that whenever you put details of yourself, you always tell people the boring stuff and you don't tell them things that really matter, like I am a mother and I have a husband, two sons who are quite grown up now. And I'm actually speaking to you from Manchester in England, in the UK. I think we still are, maybe. And yeah, we're pretty locked down around here. It's pretty boring. You know, the restaurants are open, but you're not allowed to go with any of your friends. So that's all the interesting stuff. I also do, as many of us here probably do, a lot of things with Scrum. And I use Agile and Scrum, not because I'm told to, not even because, you know, it's what's happening in my customers, but because it works. Okay, I wouldn't use it if it doesn't. It lets me do things that are sensible. I've worked a lot of my time in big hierarchical companies where you're often told to stick to the standards, and the standards don't make any sense. And somebody in one of the previous talks mentioned, what if audit come round and you know, ask you what you're doing, you know? And yeah, I've been, you know, in that situation where we've done a really good job, probably in a crisis, and we've got a successful outcome from it. In that the customers were happy, an audit have come around and ticked the box that said failed project, which is a little bit miserable when you think you did a good job. So my company, we're in Sandbach in Cheshire, which is where I am now, about 30 miles south of Manchester. And we have offices, our London base is Guildford in Surrey, but I've been fortunate enough to travel all over the world, from the States to South Africa and Australia, and occasionally places like Bolton and Manchester and all the boring stuff. So it is something that, you know, I love, because I talk to people who have the same kind of ideas, and Agile is not just about, you know, this is the rules for doing it, which a lot of approaches have always seemed to be. Okay, so why this stuff about circuses and monkeys? Okay, I will give you a little bit of an insight into where this came from to me. You may have heard there is a bit of a meme around the idea of not my circus, not my monkeys, or not my monkey. I gather it's from Polish. I'm not even going to try, but meaning not my problem. Okay, and a bit of an agenda, which I'll do my best to stick to, you know, and you'll certainly hold me accountable if I don't, I'm sure, which is to investigate this idea of accountability and responsibility, empowerment and freedom. Okay, and the lack of the empowerment and freedom sometimes. Bit of an illustration where you'll do you know, a bit of an exercise, and then we'll look at teams and the empowerment of teams and the accountability there, and hopefully take a few takeaways, but not before we've had a few little bits of video and so forth, and looked at these things from the eyes of a team in a theatre situation. So my first question to all of you, and you don't need to answer this is rhetorical, but have you ever been held accountable for something? Have you ever been told you're the one accountable, or been fortunate, maybe unfortunate enough to be standing at the sidelines when somebody else is being dressed down and told you're accountable for this? Yeah. Okay, it is a bit like the three wise monkeys, isn't it? You know, it's as bad looking on as it is actually being there and being told you haven't actually achieved what you should. So I started looking into the, you know, what does accountability really mean? I know what it's meant to me. I know what it's been to me, which is quite painful quite often. And accountability, here's a couple of definitions. I'll just give you a moment to have a look at that. Okay, and notice the words in there. It's all to do with obligation, justifying yourself. I kept tripping over the word responsibility almost as a, you know, it's almost a synonym for accountability. obligated to answer to someone else. Okay. And here from the Cambridge Dictionary, I've gone through a few different dictionaries to try and find a definition I like of accountability. I don't think I managed. And it's the fact of being responsible for what you do and able to give a satisfactory reason for it, to give an account of what you've done. Now, I started to think, well, that's not so bad to be able to say, this is what I've done. These are the things, or this is what I'm about to do. And the responsibility seemed to be, the sort of present doing the thing, but the accountability, maybe at the beginning it being thrust upon you and afterwards you've been asked to, or you've been called to account on it. I also was thinking, where does empowerment fit into this? The act of giving someone control, okay, over life, over any situation really, over a work situation. And I also found empowerment defined in terms of freedom. Okay, so freedom, what's freedom? And I had to go back to the 18th century for this. I couldn't actually talk to Jean-Jacques, but one of his friends said, freedom doesn't mean just being completely bounded by nothing. It's not being bounded by no law. It's being bounded by laws that are in some way of your own making, something that you accept, something that you agree with, yeah, or you have agreed to go along with. And at the same sort of time, with this idea in mind, I was listening to the politics. You can't help it, can you? There isn't very much on the certainly on the UK news that isn't to do with COVID. And there was a big showdown going on between Andy Burnham. This is completely non-political. I mean, it's just, I'd got the idea of accountability in mind, and he was talking. He used the words to the UK government. Listen to local leaders. We know what's going on. We know what the situation is on the ground. We know what could work or wouldn't work. We know what the mood is. And we'll accept accountability for our actions, but let us be masters of our own destiny. Okay, and I thought, yeah, that's really got to be the deal, hasn't it? If somebody's going to hold you accountable for something, you've got to have some control in there. So where did my love-hate relationship with this word accountability actually start? I've worked in a lot of big companies, insurance companies, banks, big hierarchical companies. And, really, I've been in a position where I've been told you're accountable for this. I've had people saying, when I've gone and said, look, this is a problem here. Oh, well, it's not my problem. Don't come to me with problems. Come to me with solutions. Have people done this to you? Yeah, that sort of thing. And so you're left there in the dark with no control, etc. And I was having a bit of a rant to a friend of mine that actually is, she is a clinical psychologist. So not to say that I'm under treatment, but every so often she sort of gives me a nice, gentle piece of advice. And I actually said to her, I really can't get around this. I think I'm responsible for it. I don't seem to have any power in the situation. People keep asking me to do things that I can't. And she said, look, just relax. She said, just say to yourself when these things come along, not my circus, not my monkey. Okay. And I laughed and I thought that was, I sort of got rid of some of the tension. But then I thought, I don't really want my teams to feel that way. It's nothing to do with me, not my problem, because then you still haven't got a solution. So what I'd like to do is, from all of you, and you can do this in the chat if you like, or you can actually get yourself a piece of paper, because you're going to need one a bit later on, and write it down for yourself. And in fact, while you are getting yourself a piece of paper, can I also ask you, as well as thinking about the next exercise, which I'm going to bring in, to find yourself a few coins, something on your desk that you might be able to just use a little bit later on. So just take a moment, please, and have a think, either in the chat or just to yourself, 3 bad things that you think of when you think of accountability, and also 3 good things. Okay, so just give you a moment to have a think about that and have a look and see if you can find any coins. Maybe we don't use them, do we, these days? Has anybody still got a pocket full of coins? I'd say why. Yeah. And if you can't find coins, you've probably got a desk scattered with, I don't know, USB sticks or jelly beans. Biscuits work quite well for this as well. Okay, so anything like that, get yourself equipped with a few of these things for later. But just pop into the chat, anything that you can think of. What is accountability? What are the bad things, but also what are the good things about it? Okay, and that's something you can keep going as we carry on. But my background, I'm actually a mathematician, my background, if I go back far enough. And I seem to come up with a natural law, which was something like this. Any mathematicians out there? It's kind of, if I tell you that R is responsibility and E is empowerment, and S is stress, isn't it a kind of, a whole heap of responsibility without any empowerment? That is stress to the factorial. Okay. And have you also noticed, I'm just looking at, I'm just looking at the sorts of things that people have said are good and bad. Yeah, focuses on one person. Yeah, leaves out the team. And somebody's gone off to find some paper clips. That's excellent. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I'll keep an eye on that. So yeah, responsibility without empowerment. Do you often find yourself in that position? The other thing is, have you ever noticed that accountability is pretty much always seen as a bad thing? Has anybody ever said to you, that project was a really, really successful piece of work. You're going to be held accountable for that. Yeah, they don't, do they? And yet, if we could just see that making an account of what we've done, whether good or bad, whether, good in parts, which is what most things tend to be, if we could have that and have that open without all the blame, we would perhaps learn something. Okay, so hopefully you found yourself a few coins, because we're going to have a little exercise here. As I say, anything else will do, biscuits, paper clips, if you can do it, work with that. And I'd like you to take the coins. I'm showing you in the little window here. I've got some coins. And I'd like you to balance them on one finger. And it needs to be at least 5 coins. Gosh, this is difficult. Okay, at least 5 coins. And I'd like you to balance them. You don't have to hold them up there. You can actually take them down out of sight. But, do just, try balancing those coins on your finger. See how difficult that is. Okay. Okay, so I want to make you accountable for that, and I'd like you to continue to do that throughout the next sort of 5 or 10 minutes. Quite important that you do. Okay, and so you're balancing your coins. Now, something else that my psychologist friend talked about with me was the idea of your life choices. Okay, and really the sorts of things that we're interested in. I think Danko asked, what's the meaning of life? Yeah, and a few people actually came up with it. Some of them said 42, which is probably my reaction to it. But, happiness, fulfillment, something like that. It certainly isn't, not doing any work, not doing anything. And what my friend said to me was, if you assess your life against these criteria, and perhaps think of a project. You're still holding those coins, by the way. It's very important that you do. Okay, I'm just hoping you're all doing that. But think about the level of achievement with what you do. I'm thinking of a particular project that I worked on. It was something I was brought in to help a team do in an agile kind of way, because there was insufficient time to do what they needed to do. So they thought agile meant do it fast. No sort of complaints from me made a difference to their thinking, I don't think. But what we were trying to do was implement a customer relationship management system. Decisions had all been made at a senior level, which one and what we were going to do. So my level of achievement from this project, okay, I'll just see if I can draw on here, was probably, yeah, we did achieve it reasonably well, reasonably within the time. But the meaning of it, well, we all knew what it was about, but it wasn't tremendously meaningful. We didn't know what the real objective was or what the outcome was they were going to get from it. How much did we learn? Well, it was just implementing a package. We didn't learn an awful lot. How much enjoyment did I or anyone else get out of that? Probably not very much. Okay. And if we join the dots, then that area in the middle is quite small. And I look back on that project as, yeah, it was okay, it worked, but I didn't really enjoy it. There were a lot of things we didn't enjoy about it. The long hours trying to meet a deadline, for example. Okay, you're still holding the coins, by the way. Hope you still are. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do, actually, let's take those off, shall we? I'd like you to have a think about, and if you've got your piece of paper, if you still hold the coins, but if you could just draw yourself this grid and work out for you on the grid just how much enjoyment you're getting out of this coin holding project. Okay, so just give you a moment to have a think about that. Okay, and hope you're still holding those coins there. And as we go further down, did you find maybe it was a sort of, I don't think I'm achieving a great deal. Don't know what the meaning of it was. Nobody ever said. It was just sort of, hold on to these coins. And am I learning anything? No, I think I could have, it might have even been zero. I could have actually balanced coins before now. How much am I enjoying it? Not at all. Okay. But let's have a look at what was going on there. First of all, did you even start? Did you even try and balance those coins? Or did you think, nah, I'm not doing that? And what would have made a difference? What would have made a difference? If I'd said, now I'd like you to balance some coins. And the reason we're doing this is because the Guinness Book of Records for holding coins is 4 coins for 10 minutes. And we can all be rich and famous if we can balance 5 for about 5 minutes. Would that have worked? Or if I'd said, we've got tremendous amount of sponsorship. If we can all, and there are 100 or 200 or however many of us there are here, if we can all do this balancing act for 5 minutes, the sponsorship kicks in and we get lots of money for good causes. Would that have worked? Or if I'd said, hey, how about trying to balance about 6 walruses on your finger? You might have done it just for the hell of it, yeah? Okay, so what would have made the difference? Also, the availability. If I hadn't given you another project to work on in the middle of it, yeah? If you hadn't had to do the, draw this thing on a piece of paper, what, with my finger like this? Yeah. So there are other things maybe, and again, you can drop things into the chat or you can pop them into the Slack. What is it that really motivates us? Okay. And then I started to think about the teams that I've worked with, that I've worked in, that I am part of. And I quite like Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team book, and his identification of these levels of, why teams don't work. No trust, fear of conflict, so therefore, it seems like they're all getting on, but they're actually not. Lack of commitment to the thing, probably commitment to lots of things, but not to the thing we're trying to do. Avoiding accountability, maybe even blaming to avoid it. And lack of focus, inattention to the results, not really caring. Have you ever mapped those against the Scrum Values? I think we probably all know the 5 Scrum Values. But if you think of that, it really is the opposite side, isn't it? It's if we have our focus on the right things, commitment, which we've really taken on and which we're not being forced into, it's not being used as a weapon. We have respect for each other's skills. We are open, and it's not dangerous to be open. We're courageous, but we're not in an environment where that's a foolhardy thing to do. Then perhaps we work well together. So, did you see motivated people there? Did you see, and this is from Daniel Pink's book, Drive, the elements of mastery? There was a lot of skill there. Yeah. People doing their own thing to a great extent, all with a shared purpose. Did you see some of that going on? Okay. And when you look at the intersections between these, as a mathematician, as I say, I get a bit nerdy sometimes. I always think, well, what's autonomy and mastery without purpose? What's mastery and purpose without autonomy? And there's an intersection in here. Perhaps between autonomy and mastery, it's dedication. maybe, let's just stop drawing arrows on this slide here. Maybe between autonomy and purpose, there's desire. Maybe there's a level of discipline in the mastery and keeping that to the purpose. And the drive is the center. Now, that's what Daniel Pink said. Now, what did you actually see in that video? You saw someone get up who wasn't fully confident in what they were doing to sing the song and started off a little tentatively. There were people around, they were all supporting, but not getting in the way of that person. And as that person got closer to, letting go a little bit, they did get emotional. They had support from someone else. Actually, it was Hugh Jackman. That wouldn't be bad. I wouldn't mind that. And what happened towards the end? Everybody got up and danced. So do you see a level of not just the individual motivation being needed, but do you see a level of support, approval from others? Yeah, I got it. Yeah, help when needed. Yeah, a safe environment to do it in. It requires courage, and it required courage from the other people as well to actually let that happen. And a level of talent, not just from the individual doing this, but from others as well. So that's one way of looking at this. The other thing that I've been interested in, from a management point of view, is something that David Marquet, who's written a really nice book called Turn the Ship Around, and there's a little video called Greatness, which is on YouTube and free. And he actually identifies, and it fits into the Dan Pink stuff really, in that he identifies if people have clarity of objective, if they have the competence to do the job, it is safe to give them control. But I would add in, also there, you need that support around. Yeah, you need that approval. You need that safety. And that's something that the team can provide if they're allowed to. Okay, and there's a little phrase that I've always had in mind with all of this, which is people to do a job need to be ready, willing, and able. Okay, now I did some research and I actually got back to a citation of the 1700s with this. So it's a pretty old phrase. I don't think that was from the 1700s, and I actually picked it up because it says dot. Sorry about that. But ready, willing, and able. Yeah. Are we actually, ready to do the job? Have we got that focus? Are we willing to do it? Are we motivated? Are we able? Do we have the skills? So this brought me back to thinking about accountability and empowerment and responsibility and freedom. I thought, well, I know now how to draw Venn diagrams. What are the intersections here? What about accountability and responsibility with no empowerment? I think that's definitely stress. What about responsibility and empowerment, but no accountability? Okay, maybe we do the wrong thing. Yeah, maybe there's a misalignment. What about accountability and empowerment, no responsibility? I really wasn't sure what that was. Delegation, delusion. Help me if you've got an idea. These are things if you want to drop them into the chat and so on. I really, I'm trying to sort of find my way around this. And where does freedom sit in? And I wasn't sure whether freedom was actually an ownership given by the accountability, the empowerment, the responsibility. And that was where the freedom came in. But freedom was there with ownership, freedom within bounds, within laws of your own making. But I guess I'll leave that up to you. Okay, and again, it's not being imposed. Accountability too often is imposed. I think it was one of the earlier speakers actually said, what about a dialogue, not a monologue? Yeah, that's the kind of thing it ought to be. Not that it usually is, not that it always is. Okay, so we've seen the video monkey. And while we're talking about monkeys, there's a whole concept called monkey management around. I'm not too sure that I'd recommend it to you, but how many monkeys do you actually live with? Okay, here's a few. Yeah. Have you ever felt you're in the position of monkey see, monkey do? Just do it the way I tell you. Don't think. Switch off your brain. Yeah. That's why we don't bring our best to the work. Have you had a monkey under your shoulder or a monkey on your back? Have you found out that monkeys, problems are like monkeys. If we don't get them when they're small, they've climbed to the top of the tree and there's nothing we can do about them. There's whole too much monkey business going on. And a friend of mine, a developer, said, do you know, somebody recently called me a code warrior. Much nicer than being a code monkey. Okay. And I think the other one is just a Beatles song. Everybody's got something to hide except for me and my monkey. And these ones are just cute. So what should we do about accepting accountability or about giving accountability? And just in summary, really, I think if we take it upon ourselves to investigate and understand the purpose and make sure it's something we can agree to, actually work out whether you can do the job. Have you got the team? Have you got the skills to actually do this job in the time? Have you got the right empowerment? Have you got the passion to do it? And what is the extent of the empowerment around it? Who's going to pull the rug from under you? Okay, and can we agree a safe environment for feedback and for learning and a time frame? Okay, again, something like Scrum will give us that if allowed to work in that way. But the moment there is blame, there is also hiding of things. Openness becomes actually not true, doesn't it? Okay, so use your skills, take control of yourself, and do it or don't do it. Was it Yoda? You know, do or do not. There is no try. Yeah, love it or leave it. And if you're the person having to give out the accountability, my first reaction to that is, well, don't. Accountability should be something that it's almost like, you know, small monkeys, they should be adopted, not handed over. And, you know, that thing is sort of, it's something that you've really got to get agreement to. Otherwise, it means nothing. Otherwise, the results will be, they'll probably meet the objectives written down, but will they do the job and get the outcome needed? Likely not. So clarify the outcome, why it's needed, when it's needed, how it can be delivered, broken down, but not telling people how to do their job. Okay. Discuss and agree that extent of empowerment and provide a safe environment. And then just a few paraphrases. Kurt Levine, in his 3 leadership styles, authoritarian, participative, delegative, basically says it's very easy to snatch back the empowerment you've given. Things are not going quite right. People come in and get autocratic and just snatch back. Okay. Once you've done that, you've lost the trust of a team, and they will not very readily go back to taking the responsibility, taking the empowerment that they are now told they've got because they don't believe in it. David Marquet said, if you give authority, you will create leaders. Okay, people will switch their brains on. And I have seriously paraphrased Theodore Roosevelt here, but choose the right people to do the job, but have the self-restraint to keep from meddling with them while they do it. Okay. Now, you must have been holding me to account all the way through this, because I did promise you a few things at the beginning. You know, why the circus? Why the monkeys? I talked about accountability, responsibility, empowerment, freedom. I don't know everything there is to know about these situations. I'm hoping that we can have a bit of a chat about it as we get towards the end of this talk. Have I got enough time to do that, Susie? Yeah, okay, brilliant. And we've looked a little bit at teams, and, you know, hopefully there are a few little things we can take away, but certainly we can think about this. Something I would like to do is not to have this, you know, not my problem, not my monkey kind of an attitude. I would like to think, you know, rather than that, we get the right conditions sorted out, that we actually decide that, you know, this is our monkey. We've worked out that we've got the empowerment to deal with it. Actually, do you know, this is our circus. and this is our ring. And we're not afraid to say we tried. So come on in and enjoy the ride. Okay. And at that, thank you very much for listening. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Now I'm
Are you
unmuted.
getting me?
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
They just mute me so I can't speak, you know. That's the way how they get rid of me. So thank you very much. It was awesome. I was trying to gesticulate to him.
Thank you.
Finding in chat, right? So one question from me, right? Do you have any connection or any child's memory to Circus, or how did you come up with this? Because that was a great story. I love it. But how did you come up with the Circus?
Okay, well, I'm known within my family. I don't have any connection to the circus, apart from I think I threatened to run away at the age of 5 and join the circus. But, you know, where I lived, they didn't really have very many circuses, so I obviously didn't manage to achieve that. But I do have a reputation within my family. We've always had Friday night is movie night. And when my kids were young, you know, we'd settle down and this would be the sort of crisps and lemonade and, you know, sit in front of a nice film. And I used to go, oh, do you know, that's just like this Agile situation. They used to go, shut up, mother. Yeah. So this came out of a situation like that, that we were all sitting watching The Greatest Showman. And I went, that's how a team should behave. And, you know, there's such a lot of and in that deal, that sort of not forcing it, being honest about what it's about, letting the person choose and so on. So I'm a real sort of boring person on a Friday night. I do actually get into the films. Now, I enjoyed this one. So that was where this one came from. Okay, I also did the same with Transformers, some people may have seen. You know, and that was leadership. And you see the good leader versus the bad leader in a very a cartoon way, but actually it does emphasize the point. Okay, so good question, Susie.
Cool.
Anyone else? Any other questions anyone wants to ask? Any ideas? I mean,
I
you know.
have one. So, you know, I'm always having a question. So, guys, if you want to ask something, write it to the chat specifically. The Slack chat is better than the Zoom chat. But what was the most difficult on your journey to this understanding, you know, of the teams and organizations?
What was the most difficult in my understanding? I don't know that I understand it even now. You know, I'm always learning things from the different teams. Yeah, but the most difficult part, I think, was working in some very large companies. And I've always had a tendency to take on things that are not my responsibility, hence my friend's advice, you know, to sort of, that's not your stuff. I've always had a tendency to widen the scope rather than shorten it. And I always feel, and I was brought up this way, I think, that if something goes wrong, it's my fault. You know, I could have done something about it. What, you know, what could I have done? And sometimes that's taken as, you know, well, Doc will do it, and that's great. I get a reasonable reputation for doing things, but also, you know, if people say to me, not my problem, you know, then I tend to think it must be mine and it must be my fault. So I will take that on very readily. I don't think I'm alone. I think lots of people are like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay. Okay.
So guys, if you want a question, put it there. Otherwise, I continue asking my own, right?
Okay.
No.
I'm just looking to see what I've got in the chat. I've got a few people who've said, like the accountability and the empowerment, but feeling the agreement part's often forgotten. Absolutely is. Yeah. This is Mark van der Kiel to everybody.
Yeah, and interesting was that freedom piece in the middle. But I always found the freedom very like disappearing from the corporate world. And some of my colleagues would say, no, you don't have a freedom. Therefore, you work for, you know, an organization. I'm like, I was like struggling with this. So I was really enlightened that you put that freedom in because I found it really interesting.
Right. And it's freedom. I mean, we should have freedom within bounds that make sense to us. You know, I mean, again, a previous speaker said about people bringing, not bringing their whole self to work. These are some of the reasons why, because we can't live the way that makes sense to us. And we have to then channel ourselves. And then we start seeing what the target is and working to meet the target, not necessarily working to get the right outcome. You know, you can't be blamed if you actually meet the target. One target that I remember, I was working with fire and ambulance department in the UK, and one of them said, well, you know how to improve the ambulance service, don't you? You know how to improve their performance. I said, oh, do tell me. And he said, give all the ambulance drivers a Ferrari. And I went, instead of the no, I said, you know, as an incentive. And he said, no, instead of the ambulance. Oh yes, why? Well, because if you look at our targets, we are targeted on time from the hospital to the incident. They can't blame us if you spend a while at the incident looking after the patient, but then time from the incident back to the hospital. So give us a Ferrari, we'll do it quicker. That seems to be all you're measuring. Yeah. Or, you know, at least take all the heavy equipment out of the ambulance, just slowing us down, isn't it? And that's the problem, isn't it? That people then, they target towards things that they can't be blamed for because they know there's blame there. And the thing that perhaps, I don't know whether it came out, but for me, accountability isn't a bad thing. It actually should be a really good thing. If it was, when you've done something, let's work out what we can actually learn from that. Not by blaming someone, but what can we learn? What can we improve? And if that could be done completely openly, then we would get the learning. The moment there's blame, you don't get the learning.
Isn't that whole entire agility and agile movement, as I would call it, around this whole thing, right? Don't blame and let's work it out.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at the damage that blame does, it isn't just to the individual and their sort of their ego. It's right, all the other people around, I'm not admitting to that because I'll get that treatment. Yeah. I'm not going to admit to that because that won't get me on. You know, that's not politically a good thing to admit that we've done. And there all the learning just, you know, goes under the carpet.
Where do you see the future of organizations?
Oh, now that's really a good question. Quite a long time ago, I've been involved in Agile since I was about, you know, since the year dot. And I was actually at a conference and I was on the panel of speakers because I'd done a little talk in the day, and I was right at the end, you know, the important people at the one end, and I was right at the other end. So, and somebody in the audience said, so do you see all these big organizations changing their structure to take on this agile stuff? Do you actually see these, you know, these huge hierarchical organizations who've been around for decades, sometimes hundreds of years? Do you see them changing? That's not what got the management to that point. And I was sitting there going, you know, biting my nails and thinking, what do I say? I've got to say something clever. And somebody who was much more important and intelligent at the other end of the panel went, well, they'll just go out of business, won't they? And the audience laughed. This is about 10 years ago, something like that. And yet, what are we seeing now? The organizations that are actually rising are not those organizations. And some of those big organizations, and, you know, accelerated by the COVID situation, I know, but some of those organizations are just fading. Yeah. And if they don't keep up, they will fade. I don't think some of them will change. I think others, maybe with a change of management and with a crisis situation, which is always good for change, isn't it? Maybe some of them will now, but I think a lot of them will just carry on the way they always did and fade into the sunset.
We've been chatting a little bit about opportunities of this crisis here before, right? So what do you see as opportunity from this crisis? What can emerge from it?
Right, okay. I mean, I think any crisis is a time when we start behaving in a naturally agile way. You know, we don't think of it as agile, it's just what we do. You know, it's a sort of, oh, heck, I'd forgotten my sister's birthday in 3 weeks' time. We haven't organized anything. We've got to bake a cake and so on. And we get the right people together and we all start doing stuff. Yeah. Same sort of thing in a work crisis. Who do we need? Who are the decision makers? Who can we get together? Get together in a virtual room if it's now, and, you know, let's sort this thing out. So crises often make us do the sensible stuff. And I think that's what's going on now. I mean, how quickly have we all managed to go, right, these are the things we need to do. I've run training in classroom venues for years. Suddenly, I run no training in classroom venues, and I run training in this sort of way. And if you'd said to me 12 months ago, you'll be doing everything like this, I would have said, no, we won't. No, I mean, I can't beat sort of talking to people, can you? And yet, and I was talking to Sorab over the break, there are some things that are actually advantages of working in this way, as well as the disadvantages, but there are some extra things we can bring out from it, you know, and extra things that people can get, because now they have to arrange to talk to each other. You could be in an office 5 days a week with people sitting on the same bench, and that person didn't talk to that person. Yeah. And now, you know, you have to arrange and you have to talk. So I think the, you know, the advantages will be a different way of communicating, a different level of communicating. We can only do it with relatively small teams, so that'll push that. And I think if people realize, you know, that we've got to be able to do things quickly, then they will. Because I think Agile is just a natural way we work, but we tend to wait for a crisis before we change.
What's the most difficult to your experience for those organizations on their Agile journey? This openness, etc., right? Like, what's the most hard?
Okay, it depends on the organization, I think. I've worked with some very small companies, some medium-sized, some very large ones. Sometimes the organization is naturally growing and they are naturally working in an agile way. Other times, you know, they really can't get over the fact that it feels dangerous to give all these people empowerment. But if they can watch the sort of work that there is there, some work doesn't need any creativity, but there's not much of that around. Most of that's already been automated. Yeah. And now, I mean, if you ask a room full of people, and I probably asked the people listening in, how many of you think you're being asked to be creative in your jobs? Yeah, I think we pretty much all are these days. So I think what's been the most difficult thing depends on the organization. Some organizations will never let go of that, you know, the reins of control. But what they'll end up with then is one brain thinking and a lot of, you know, human robots.
Wow.
Okay.
What is the one thing you want people to remember from today?
Oh, from today or from just my talk? I think from my talk, I did actually do a little bit of thinking about this beforehand. I think the fact that you, if you're in a management situation, can't effectively give accountability. The moment you start doing that and saying, not my problem and so on, you'll get people working towards satisfying, you know, the letter of something and not the actual real outcome needed. I think freedom needs to have rules, consequences. I know this is more than one thing, but I'm cheating.
That's okay.
And that accountability can be a positive thing. If we were able to, and we should, within a framework where we're doing things in short sprints, be looking at things regularly enough to take the learning out of them and so on. If we can have that open environment, then the accountability is just being able to say what it was you did and what happened and what went right, what went wrong, so that we can learn. So if we can turn it round into being a positive thing, I think then, you know, we've actually got something really, really good there. Okay, that was from my talk. The one thing from the whole day that I've written down I'm going to take away was the comment from Michelle Zanini, which is, I think a Java app has just hijacked my computer. I'm going to use that.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much for this awesome talk.
Thank you very much too. I ought to go back to my office.
Yeah.
And I'll see you all later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have a 10 minutes break.
Okay. Thank you. Bye now.